Today is our first ever Education on Air conference. Today, educators are holding 46 Hangouts on Air, leading discussions on a number of topics in education technology. So thanks to all presenters for giving their time to this, and once again, for everyone watching, thank you as well. So our presenters do have early access to Hangouts on Air, which is a technology that allows you to broadcast and record Hangouts. So to watch any of the sessions today, simply go to the presenters Google Plus page at the appointed time. You can find a list of all the sessions and links to presenters' pages on the conference website at sites.google.com/site/EduOnAir. So once again, it's sites.google.com/site/EduOnAir. So just to introduce Greg. Greg has been a teacher for over 15 years and currently teaches at the school at Columbia University. He received the 2010 Presidential Award for Excellence in Science and Mathematics Teaching and was a finalist for the Shell Science Teaching Award in 2012. He is also a Google Ops for Education certified trainer. He has presented at national conferences and lead numerous workshops for teachers on Google Ops, science education, innovation, classroom practice. He's also published articles in peer-reviewed journals and blogs on education for the New York Academy of Sciences. He is an adjunct faculty member at the Bank Street College Graduate School of Education. Greg is also the founder and director of Teach21, an institute for teacher professional development that offers workshops and creates partnerships with New York City schools. So with that being said, Greg, once again, thank you so much for taking the time, and get your session started.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. So I'm excited to be here. This is an exciting new way to think about professional development. I'm really interested in the format. I've done webinars, I've done live talks. This has a very different feel to me, and I'm excited to see what comes out of it. And I really wanted to make it more discussion-based rather than just presenting a lot of information. So I thought we could start just to hear from who's in the session here. I'm Greg, and I was introduced, so maybe we could go around going across the screen here. I don't know if it's in the same order for everybody, but Anthony, you're on the left side of my page here, and maybe you could just say a little bit about what interested you in Google Apps for teacher education. I noticed part of the reason I chose this session is there's a lot of sessions geared towards how you use Google Apps in the classroom, but I think there's a lot of potential for using this for training teachers and helping teachers get better, and I want to talk a little bit about that today. So I just want to hear what everybody's where everyone's coming from. So Anthony, if you don't mind.
Sure. Hi, I'm Anthony Edwards. I am a science teacher at Marine Creek Collegiate High School in Fort Worth, Texas, and use Google Apps on a daily basis. I use Google Presentations, Google Docs, Google Spreadsheets, and use that to communicate with our students, with teachers, administrators, parents, and also just helping. I spend a lot of time, even though I'm not the technical director at our campus, I spend a lot of time referring and helping teachers use technology on the campus. So that's why I wanted to contribute to the session. Thanks.
Hi, is that Dan? Are you the next? I think you're the next over on my screen.
That's correct. I'm a fourth grade teacher and a technology director. I help to lead our faculty, students in using technology on a regular daily basis. So I'm here to learn more about it, how it's being used, and ways to implement it to the staff and the students.
Great.
Hi, I'm Derek Waddell. I'm also a Google Apps for Education certified trainer. I work for Coleman County Schools in Alabama. I was a high school teacher for 7 years and just moved to the district level as our district level technology integration specialist. So it's a big change for me moving from teaching high school students to teaching adults. So it's fun to see how other people are doing the same thing, and maybe I can learn something and maybe I can contribute. So that's
great.
Me.
Stacy?
Hi, I'm Stacy Begin. I work for California Teachers Association, and I just started using Google Plus to Hangout to do video conferencing with some of my colleagues and with some of the teachers, as well as having people remotely watch me do a training. So I'm relatively new to it, and I'm excited to be here and learn something. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you all for coming. Let me start, just pull up some slides here. Let's see, I'm going to go into the screen share. There we go. And let's go. There we go. Okay, so I have a little presentation. I wanted to start just by showing some of what I'm here to talk about today, which is the Google Apps for Teacher Education. And I've kind of broken the session into two parts. One that has to do with the way I used it in a pre-service context in a methods class at Bank Street College. And then I also want to move into how that applies to using it with teachers in a school, which is some of the stuff I do at the school at Columbia. And I think there's a lot of crossover. So let me just tell you a little bit about what I've been doing at Bank Street. Here's a little bit on me. That slide's not coming up so well, but we'll work on that. So when I'm talking about teacher education, there's the adult learning environment. There's the teacher education learning. There's also this, the teacher collaboration piece and developing professional learning communities. So I think some of the stuff that I do at Bank Street also ties over to hopefully how teachers use it after they leave the pre-service environment. And also, I think what's important about this is Google Apps is can be such a powerful tool in the classroom. It's a powerful thing for teachers to be using professionally as well, and it gives them more insight into how to use it in the classroom and to get ideas. So I'm going to be hitting a lot of those things. We could go into a whole discussion of theoretically why this is important. I think kind of my bias is I think sometimes too much emphasis is put on the tools and not on the learning theory. And I think the way that you teach, there's a lot of different tools you can use. It turns out that technology tools are very powerful, but it's really important that it be grounded in strong theory. And I could talk a long time about this here, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on that in this session. But a lot of the stuff that's coming out of the learning sciences in terms of social constructivist approaches to teaching, situated cognition, the transfer theory, a lot of that is a really strong advocacy for using some of these tools, especially if you use them in ways that are supported by the research and teaching. So if you combine that approach with the tool, I think you can get classroom environments that are very different from the traditional environment. And in fact, there's a whole area of literature called the computer-supported collaborative learning literature, which I recommend people look at because it talks a lot about kind of the theory behind why collaborating online is such a powerful way to teach. So basically, I'm talking about a little case study here. I teach an elementary science methods class at Bank Street College, and I usually teach the summer semester. And I had a course that I thought was pretty good. We did a lot of work with materials. I spent a lot of time having the teachers experience learning as learners and then reflected on that process. And so we spent a lot of time kind of thinking about how to cognitively change our idea about what learning is, to think about how to implement some practices in the classroom. And there were a lot of things I really liked about that class. And so what I wanted to do is take a class that was already good and make it better for pre-service teachers. And that's where the blended learning comes in. And by blended, I mean we were doing the same powerful activities in the class session. And it was not an online class. It was an in-session class. But we used these tools to extend the class session, like a 24/7 type environment, where the teachers could be interacting outside of the class in a variety of ways. And I want to show some of that. Here's the class before. We built circuits. We talked about it. There's a lot, especially at elementary science, has a particular challenge that there's a lot of fear around science. There's a lot of kind of just getting comfortable with the idea of doing it. In fact, in particular, I think in elementary science, if teachers aren't comfortable, they don't even teach it. And so the science doesn't even happen. And so building up their efficacy, making them feel more comfortable was important. We did a lot of discussion and talking, in groups, and so that was a big important part of that as well. So the first thing I did with Google Apps was just a very simple implementation. I just made a Google site, and I found that made things a lot more clear. I could, post what the homework was. I could make all the information very clear. That's what I call Google Apps Phase 1. It's kind of, it's not a very advanced use of Google. This was the first time I introduced Google into the course. And all the links were accessible. It's not so different from setting up a Moodle site or setting up something very simple. And so this isn't really what I want to spend a lot of time talking about. When I went into the second time kind of incorporating Google, which I call Google Phase 2, what I did was I changed the way that the written reflection portion of the course happened. So in previous semesters, what I did was people wrote reflections on their experience in the course, and then they handed them to me, and I would give them feedback on that reflection. And so what I realized is that using Google, I could change that format, and so I put them in small groups, and I had them post their papers as Google Docs, and they could actually give each other feedback on those Google Docs. And I set up a site to help organize it. Here you can see on the Google Docs page, I set up what were called collections. Now we're back to folders. Sometimes you have to be careful. The terminology can change. But what I have going on here is I have 5 reflection groups in the class, and they not only wrote these reflection papers on their experiences in the class, but they could read each other's reflections, and they gave each other feedback. And the comment feature in Google Docs is really powerful. You can see here, people can highlight specific areas of the text and write their comments, and I, as the instructor, can also do the same thing. And it also has this great feature that it sends an email directly to that person as well. So it has a lot of features that help promote this kind of collaboration and interactive learning. And all of this was happening outside of the class, so it was, in a way, extending the class time. So I was really excited that there was kind of this different format to how learning was happening in this pre-service class. I also, another thing I did was I had different, every week somebody was responsible to be kind of the note taker and kind of capture what happened in the course. So if someone was absent, they could go to the site and get that. So they were almost like the author of the course site, in a way, of giving information on that. And that was a really useful tool. We also used it a few times in the course. We did an activity around electricity that you saw a picture of, and they actually posted their questions in a Google Doc. And that was a really powerful experience for them, because they realized that they could come back to those questions over a few sessions, and they could even add questions outside of the session. So they were starting to understand not only more about science pedagogy, but also about how these tools can be used in an educational setting. And I thought that was exciting. And in fact, the students in the class were really excited about it. In fact, one student said, "Wow, I'd never been in a course at this college where technology worked all the time." I think a lot of the challenges around using technology with teachers is if the technology doesn't work, it can be a real frustration. And so the Google seemed to really work, and it really provided the things they needed. And it was motivating, and it helped them really think. When I looked over the comments they were making, they were learning just as much from the comments they were making on other people's work as they were from the actual reflection. Because when they were making the comment, they had to really think about what that teacher was experiencing, and they were really applying a lot of the ideas in the course. And so that was really interesting to me. So I wanted to just present that case and use that as a kind of the beginning of our discussion of in terms of thinking about how to use Google Apps to promote teacher development, and in terms of how they use it to kind of share ideas. And so I wanted to first maybe just open up and see if people have any questions or kind of connections to what I've shared so far, and then we can go in a little deeper into kind of the stuff that I did.
I don't want to get too far ahead. I'm afraid you might get to it eventually, but with the shared document and being able to communicate back and forth, we've used groups for kind of the same functionality. Are you going to touch on that?
Yeah, I've done some things with groups at the school at Columbia. What I found powerful about this was that they could make specific. Most of the interaction was around the actual papers, and so they could make specific comments in the papers. And I found this is really useful also with my students. We're a K through 8 school, and I find that's also a very powerful tool when, with editing, peer editing, and peer feedback. There's something I really like the Google Docs interface of being able to make comments in the text, and then, one of the things I'm thinking about is where to take the course from here. Like maybe I need to be doing more collaborative work, and thinking they could be like one important part of the course is they create lesson plans. Well, there's one of the challenges that I find in the pre-service setting is, often you'll be given a group assignment, and then it's very hard to collaborate around a group assignment because of time constraints and all of those things. I think Google provides an opportunity to have those kinds of offline discussions that make collaboration and creating a collaborative document much more powerful. But I think Google Groups can be that works more through kind of an email format, if I'm correct.
And what's great about the functionality that we've recently implemented is that the groups functionality can be embedded into a site now. So you embed the Google group into a Google site, and it creates sort of a discussion forum, discussion threads, so that people can post a discussion and respond to a discussion, much like it would in an LMS environment.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that. Are there other kind of reactions or thoughts about the implications of this kind of work?
And just to reiterate, if anyone is just listening, you're welcome to post comments in the Google Plus page, and I will make sure to bring them up. This is why I keep a computer. I have another computer here that I'm monitoring things with.
Well, I'd like to comment on that because I think there's a tendency when you put a course online to just put content online, but like you talked about earlier, that it has a lot to do with how you teach the course and how you create the conversations and the interaction, so that there is that learning outside of the classroom more than just turning in assignments. So because I think that collaboration is really where the real learning occurs.
Yeah, I mean that goes back to a lot of the learning theory that I was saying. In fact, I think that's been a big critique against e-learning. There was this idea that you throw all this content online and suddenly people are going to learn, and that's not really how learning happens. That you have it's just as much work to set up the online component as it is the in-class component. You really have to think about how the learning is going to happen. And what I found in this course was when the teachers were talking, were communicating through this channel, they were developing understanding, and they were also developing these skills of working together. And I think that's something that we've underutilized in schools is the power of collaboration. A lot of schools are set up, everyone's in a classroom by themselves, and what I've seen is the most powerful education happens when teachers are working together. But we're limited by time constraints. And I think some of these tools can allow us to do that collaboration effectively, but help us alleviate some of the time constraints and the various constraints that make that hard. in schools. And let's see. I think Kyle, you've joined us.
Hi.
Now I know you're in a university setting, I believe.
Yes, I'm at Brock University in Ontario, Canada, the Faculty of Education, and we actually had an educational technology leadership group this year, and actually for that group, there wasn't specific class time that was scheduled on a regular weekly basis or anything. In fact, most of the work that was done with that group was collaboratively working online with Google Docs primarily, and sharing information in that way.
That's great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It seems like there's a lot of people working in connection with schools. So I wanted to kind of move the conversation to thinking about how this works in a school setting, and I think we can go back and forth from the school to the pre-service environment, because I think they're all connected. When we're training teachers, there's a number of phases of training that they go through. They start in a pre-service setting, and then that training needs to keep going throughout their career. So let me just show a little bit on the I have a couple slides on this. Let me get this set here. There we go. So I work at a school. It's called the School at Columbia. It is an independent school, but it's also an experimental school. It's half of the student population is connected to the university, and half is a lottery from the community. So we serve a wide range of kids in a lot of different, in diversity socioeconomically, and so it's in many ways it's an experiment to see, with the right resources, using technology, can we make this school work? And I think one piece of it is using some of these tools to make learning more effective. One of the things that we focus on at my school is an integrated curriculum, meaning there's a lot of crossover between disciplines, but a big emphasis of that is thinking about how people work together. Because as I said before, I think when people collaborate, that creates powerful educational opportunities. We also think a lot about how we use meetings. And so we have time for faculty to meet during the day. We've scheduled times for each grade level to meet once a week. But one of the challenges of that is, how do you use that time? And that's, I think, where some of these Google tools come in. So we have Google Sites that we've set up at every grade level, and these Google Sites are used partially just to document what's going on. So instead of, you come to the meeting and you share, everyone shares what they're doing, you already know what everyone's doing, because you can look at it on the site, and there's information on the site that shows you what's going on. We also do a lot with the Google Docs to have teachers collaborate, and I've found that it makes a lot of things more efficient, like making groups of kids. You don't have to spend so much time meeting and talking about it. You can just post those groups, and then people can give their feedback on it. And so the Google Docs have been a powerful tool that we've used. And this year we've tried something new of using Google Calendar. And in fact, our whole schedule is now on Google Calendar. And it's taking some time for faculty to get used to it, but we're finding that faculty have more opportunities to think creatively with a calendar that they can manipulate, and they can actually set up new classes or new collaborative projects in ways that it was hard to do without a tool that lets everybody know what's going on. And it also helped with communication as well, ensuring that people knew what was going on at various times, like when the trip was happening and when things started, and other things like that. And we've also been experimenting with professional learning communities, and I'm finding that using these Google tools provides a lot of opportunities to think about how people to work together and share information in new ways, and all of that information can be documented in a Google site, on a Google Doc, so you have easy access to it, and there's not as much issues around organizing it and knowing where to get it. And so that's been a big part of it. But let me close this for a second. I wanted to just spend some time talking. I wonder how other people. We have a lot of people in the Hangout that are involved in professional development of teachers. How are other people using Google as a tool for professional development?
We have not used Google tools too much, mostly with documents. Our administrative staff is sharing Google documents, and we're editing them for meetings and other things. But other than that, we're not using it too much.
We've been using Google Docs to actually help us keep track of some of the equipment that we're using as part of that EdTech group. We've been the students have been using Google Docs to work collaboratively on various projects. We also, at the beginning of the year, gave the students some training as well, because surprisingly, a lot of the pre-service teacher candidates had never even uploaded a video to YouTube, so even giving them some direction there and showing them, look, it's actually quite easy to use this to create material that you intend to share, and absolutely encouraging them to share as well.
Hi.
Hi.
This is Stacy. Am I up?
Yep.
I'm using it. My territory is a big chunk of California, and I'm using it to connect teachers throughout the state. When I can't physically be there to do professional development, we're starting to use Google Hangout to do exactly what you're doing today, where I share information on special ed law and teacher rights and what's going on, trends. I'm able to use my Prezi, which is like PowerPoint, but this is good. I'm hearing a lot of ideas about using Google Docs and different things to interact with these educators, but they need the face-to-face. It's really important to have that. So this is great.
So you're using the Google Hangout to get more of that face-to-face, even though you're not in the same place.
Yes. So I'm using it in the sense that I can do a training from the lecture of my house in San Diego when I'm working with people up and down the state. We're doing a lot of work around national board certification, and the candidates that are going through that process have many questions, and sometimes they need some encouragement and motivation and moral support from their peers, and so I've been using the tool in that way. I just did that last week, and it was really effective. And the sharing of the screen is handy.
Yeah, we haven't done so much with using Google Hangout so far. We don't have Google Hangout set up for our K-8 domain because of the various COPA laws. I don't know. We're considering of creating 2 different domains so that we could use Google Hangout more for our teachers, definitely. But we have done a lot with the Google Docs and the Google Sheets, and not only does it allow for better communication of information between teachers, but we're also finding it's really helpful for support people. So traditionally, it's hard for support people, either professional development people who are maybe supporting the math curriculum, or pull-out support people to be really in touch with what's going on in the classroom. And now there's a lot of tools. The more stuff we have online, the more opportunities they have to kind of connect into that and to see exactly what's going on. And even for assessment information, if you put that on a Google Sheet, suddenly the teacher, the support person, the learning specialist, all of the various people who work with these issues, the administrator, can all have access to the same information, and they can be updating that information, and they all have access to the same version of the information. So it's a really big, in many ways, I would say, a big shift in terms of clarity of communication in schools. And I think that works. We have the luxury that we're a little smaller. We're about 520 students, so we're a fairly small school. But a lot of this does scale up, and so that's a powerful feature of it.
One of the uses that sort of came to the surface as well as we were encouraging the students in this group to use Google Docs and Google+, they started using the Messenger feature. So, my phone would go off and it would be one of the students asking if anybody had a globe that they could have access to. So it gave this method to them to ask for help, immediately from their peers as well as from the instructors.
So they were using the message in Gmail?
No, the actual Messenger feature of Google+.
Oh, okay, the Messenger in Google+.
Yeah.
Very nice. Thank you. I'm interested what kind of challenges people see. Kyle, you mentioned that some people weren't that familiar with using the docs. I've been actually surprised how quickly people pick up the skill set, and that's including the fact that a lot of these tools are constantly changing. In my course at Bank Street, the students a lot of them had done some work with Google tools before the class, and they picked up a lot of the tools. They found them to be fairly easy to learn, and I'm wondering, one of the challenges that I've seen at the school at Columbia, where I've been doing some work I've worked with the teachers as well, is that some of the tools, like the Google Docs, comes very quickly. Some people, like with the calendar function, it's kind of a bigger shift in how you think, and a lot of people are still very attached to the idea of a calendar being something that's posted on a wall, or a schedule being something that's posted on a wall. And the idea of a live schedule is a bigger kind of paradigm shift. And I'm just wondering where are people seeing the challenges in terms of changing to this new way of looking at collaboration and sharing of information?
We did have some people who took to it very quickly, and others, and that will always be the way. You're going to have a pretty big gap from the person who's on the leading edge and that person who's just picking up the tools for the first time. But as many of us know, a problem is really a disguised opportunity. And in particular, working with pre-service teacher candidates, the opportunity there is, in a leadership course, you're telling them, okay, so you know how to do this. Here's your opportunity to show someone else. So you're sort of getting practice at a skill, showing someone else how to do something.
Great.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I do teach online as well as an adjunct faculty, and I find the younger generation of teacher has no problem figuring this out, and they're not reluctant. I do see them running into challenges, and myself as the instructor, getting them together in their groups so they can do work in cyberspace, the scheduling. So would Google Calendar be something that you guys would recommend to solve that issue so they can work together? It's like setting up a right time. I see these mass emails with reply all going out, and it's mass confusion.
I can talk a little bit about how we use, I haven't used Google Calendar so much in my pre-service class, though I'm glad you brought that up. That's something for me to think about. We've used it in a lot of different ways at my school. One is just for kind of managing resources, and that can be true, that's definitely true at the classroom level. It also helps people figure out that they have the resources they need to collaborate. But the calendar tool is really useful for setting up times to meet, and I've been using that a lot with colleagues here at the school at Columbia. Just you're trying to find a time to meet. If everyone's calendar is on a system and it's shared, you can instantly see when people are free. It is a little easier in this work environment because there's kind of this expectation that's your work calendar, that's a shared calendar. It could get a little trickier around, private calendars versus public calendars for, students. I don't know. I haven't thought so much about that. But I think, I'm seeing a lot of opportunity. I'm finding it much easier to find meeting times with people using the Google Calendar. And some of the nice features here, let me see if I can pull something up here. Let me just go to the screen share here. Here is, let's see. So here's the calendar here. Let's see here. So here's, for example, let me actually pull up this. Okay. Here's a schedule. Here's the one we have. Every grade has a variety of various sections. Here's the 1C calendar. You can see all of the things that's going on in the 1C classroom, from art class to a tech class, which involves usually a collaboration with a tech support person. There's all these various classes that are going on. I think that makes it easier to figure out where things fit in. And it's very easy to move these blocks around by dragging them. So you can drag them to a new spot, and you can just change it for that week. And so I'm finding that the calendar allows for a lot of opportunities to kind of manage that kind of logistical piece that can be a little bit of a nightmare in a way that you can spend more of your time focused on the working together and really making the powerful learning happen.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay. In working with teachers, I know we spend a lot of time now talking about the flipped classroom with working with students, but my question would be for those of you who are directly in teacher education, to what extent does maybe using Google Apps and kind of flipping your instruction on how to use it effectively, to what extent do you think that could be useful? Because in working with teachers on campus, one of the challenges that I think if teachers are used to using, say, Microsoft Office and making the transition to cloud computing can be overwhelming for some, also part with the technology, but also with the giving up control in that shared calendar or that shared file or shared collection on Google Docs. Do you think that might be a solution, or are there other solutions you might suggest?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I like how you brought up the flipped classroom. I actually have my own kind of take about the flipped classroom that I want to kind of share first, and then I'll try to address your question directly. I think one of the issues that I have around a lot of the talk of the flipped classroom is it seems like a lot of it's just the flip. And what I mean by that is people say, well, we have a flipped classroom, but then there's not and this isn't true across the board, but I feel like some people think the flip is what it's about. The flip is only valuable to the extent that you use it to teach something useful. And I see a lot of examples of flipped classroom where it seems like just a bunch of lectures and maybe some quizzes, and then there's not that much discussion. Well, what are you using that class time for now that you have this extra classroom time? How are you making that more effective? And then I think we also have to question what how valuable are those lectures that you've kind of recorded and put online. That said, I think there is a lot of potential to changing what happens in the classroom and what happens outside the classroom. In terms of the kind of training stuff that you're talking about, I think there's a lot of potential to use outside of class for that kind of training, and it also lends itself to the idea that different people need different amounts of training on getting up to speed with something like a tool related to Google. And luckily there's a lot of stuff online already that a lot of help information that people can go to get up to speed and use. I'm always surprised. You can almost, if you get to a certain level of comfort with these tools, if you know enough of what to look for, you can find the answer to almost anything just by Googling it. And so there's a lot of answers in various blogs, in various help messages. And so I think it's about teaching, especially at the pre-service level, teaching the skills so you know how to answer your own questions and get that help. But I think there's a lot of different ways to structure classroom time, and I'm really excited to kind of play around with, well, I really like playing around with this blended environment. Like, what should be happening face-to-face? What should be happening beyond face-to-face in the cloud? And I think often some combination of the two is the most powerful model. Although, of course, sometimes it's hard to get the face-to-face if you're doing something that's distance.
I have a question. I recently visited a school in which the instructors were using iPads and the students were using iPods or iPod Touches. The teacher wasn't using it for the instruction, but it was for the work after she delivered the instruction, for students to create a product, per se. And they would send that to their teacher. Their teacher would look at it and then give them feedback. How could you use Google Docs for something like that?
That's a good question. There's a lot. I think there's a lot of potential, and it's actually expanding as we speak. The Google Drive just came out, which was a big expansion of the amount of memory that you have access to in your Google Docs area. And that's really important because that controls how much stuff you can load into your Google Docs. And now there's a feature called Google Docs Video that lets you load a video, say something you made on an iPad, something you made on an iPod. You can load that video right into Google Docs, and then you can control the sharing of it and embed it on a Google site and use it in a lot of effective ways. So I think what we're looking at is new ways for kids and teachers to show what they know, and opportunities to actually post that in places so that people can see it. And I think, I've spent a little bit of time talking about it at the classroom level with students, but I think this is a really powerful piece for professional development as well. And I think the real sea change is going to be around more powerful forms of assessment. I think we've been so focused on very limited forms of assessment, of standardized tests and other things that don't really assess deep understanding, don't necessarily assess the kind of critical thinking that we want. I think what you mentioned, like making a video or doing something that's a little more creative, provides opportunities to show that deeper understanding. And if teachers are sharing these assessments and commenting on it, then that's an avenue of professional development as well, is really getting a better picture of things that are going on in different classrooms. Because there's not a lot of time for teachers to see all the different things that are going on in different classrooms in a school. But using these tools, they could be seeing a much clearer picture of it and sharing that information and giving each other feedback. And I think that's something I'd like to see done more, and using these tools to do that.
The question I have is, the challenges that seem to come up more often are not so much technical in nature as they are administrative, procedural, or just general resistance from your peers, from your coworkers, from leaders. So I'm just wondering what that might have looked like for you and how you addressed that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's anytime there's change, there's always going to be resistance. I remember I had one woman in my science methods class who kind of came to me and she said, there's no way I can do this, and you know, she was considering leaving the course, but then she decided, you know what, this is something. You know, through our conversation, she came to the idea that maybe this was something she needed to learn. This was part of her training, was to get comfortable with the new tools that are coming out. And by the end of the course, she was actually one of the biggest advocates of it. And so I think a lot of overcoming the difficulties is people working hard and trying things out and addressing, you know, taking it one step at a time. In terms of administrative challenges, I think it's often about, you know, I find going to the people who I know are supportive of it and getting them behind it is a big part of it. I think it's a mindset issue, and it's usually not the technical issues that hold it up. It's getting in that mindset that, you know, this is kind of having the vision to see where it's going to go and getting through the challenges, because there's always challenges. And in fact, this is our first year of my school using Google Calendar aggressively. I'd say 25% of the faculty have been using it and really embraced it. Hopefully we're going to be, you know, more than 25% next year, but it takes time for people to change their mindset about how they do things and how they collaborate, because that's something that's, you know, very kind of, it's very personal to people. It seems like we've lost our support person here. Stevens ran into some technical problems, and I was asked to end it close to 7:45. But I wonder, are there any other kind of other remarks or questions that people wanted to get in before we close?
Well, I would like to, you know, a lot of times we start with the technology, but I was wondering, based on your, I guess, theory background, what are, I guess, some theory you think are most relevant to how we use Google Apps in the classroom?
Sure. I mean, going back, here, let me bring this slide back here. There we go. Let's see if I can get this. So, yeah, I love the theory. So I was talking a little bit at the beginning about the learning sciences. To be honest, the learning sciences are kind of the best thing going, in my opinion, because all of the things that I believed in all these years, you know, the John Dewey, the Vygotsky, the Piaget, now there's evidence out there that supports all of these things, and there's this idea of social constructivist learning, that learning is not really just about individuals learning. It's a social phenomenon. And so you can't just look, you know, that's the whole standardized test movement, is you just look at individuals and you measure them individually. Well, it turns out that people learn in a social context, and the learning exists, or at least some of the learning exists in the group and not in the individual at all. And I think that's particularly relevant because if you look at the workplaces that our students and our teachers and all of these people are going to be going into, we're expecting them to work effectively in groups. And what I've seen is, I think, you know, I think education has done a lot of great things. I think sometimes it's ignored, that ability to collaborate, that ability to work as a team, and that being just as important as your content knowledge, just as important as other things that we've been measuring. And so I think, you know, I think the theory is really important, that we really need to look at what we value in learning. And I think when we start to value learning, you know, based on a social context, and learning and you know, I also mentioned the situated cognition, which is about the learning as part of the situation and how authentic the task and the situation is. I think it gives more value to this approach of collaboration. And I think really to me, what Google is about is providing new tools of collaboration. It's not the only tool out there, but it allows a lot of things to come together in a way that people don't have to be learning 8 different tools. There's one tool that kind of does a number of different things, and that's what I like about it. And as long as and the other thing is they're working on it. A lot of technology in the past, you'd get it, and all the problems, you just had to learn how to live with it. Here, the tool gets better, and I'm finding that teachers are finding new things that I didn't even know. Like they were, you know, on some of our computers, we have a little camera on the top, and you know, to get images in a Google Doc, you would like take a picture and you'd put it into the Google Doc. Well, one of the teachers at my school came to me and said, you know, now you can have the picture go right into the Google Doc from the camera on the screen. And there's like an option. Here, I could probably even show you here. Wait, do I have this? Yeah, I have this open. Okay. So I could show you, let's see if I create a new Google Doc here. This is just something, you know, it's not a big deal application, but it's just they're always making new stuff. So here, if you go to Insert Image on the Google Doc, now you have this option of take a snapshot. So you can actually get the picture right from your screen. Let's see, and there, look, there's me right in front of the computer, and I can take that snapshot and put it right in. And so there's just things are being added, and I think that's exciting too, because you know it's getting better, and they're thinking about some of the same things that we're thinking about in terms of how to make it more effective. And so that's just something I'm excited about as well. I hope that answers your question, Anthony. I know I kind of went all over the place. So are there any other thoughts? I've really enjoyed talking with you guys today. I think I appreciated how it was not just about tools. We were also talking about the process and the education piece, and I think that's something that really needs to be emphasized when we're talking about, you know, talking about Google and Google products. It's not just about a tool. It's about, you know, a way of learning and an approach to education. And I think that's what we really need to focus on. So thank you all for coming. Let me just throw up my, let's see, I think I have a bio here somewhere at the end of this. Hopefully it'll come out. The earlier one didn't come out. Here I am. I wanted to tell you that at my school we're doing a professional development series that's really about the kind of the learning theory and how to apply it in it's a K-8 focus, but in a K-8 classroom, and it's called Teach 21, and we have workshops June 18th through 21st this year, and the website's up there, teach21.theschool.columbia.edu. Also, feel free to contact me by email or by Twitter or Google+, which I actually use this email address for my Google+. You can contact me there. But thank you all, and thank you for the listeners. Sorry that I wasn't able to address listener questions who were outside of the Hangout because something happened and Stephen dropped out, and to be honest, I didn't feel like I could handle looking at the group chat and outside the chat as well. So, but thank you very much.